Hello and welcome to the Try Talking Sport podcast hosted by me, Joanne Murphy. Whether you are an athlete, adventurer, endurance enthusiast or simply have an interest in sport, you have come to the right place for inspiration, encouragement, motivation and a little bit of entertainment. How are we all doing? I can't believe it's the last week of February. This month flew, even though there was a lot of Groundhog Day moments and I often forgot what day of the week it was. Every day rolls into the next and I definitely think at times I have COVID brain. Well, that's what I'm calling it anyway. It's just pretty much forgetfulness. Anyway, thankfully, there are lots of signs of spring around, including brighter mornings and of course the very welcome grand stretch in the evening. We really have no excuse not to get outside for fresh air and exercise, even within our 5k radius. I know 5k is not very far, but look, it's not 2k. And I'm sure we can all find ways to mix up our training and our activities within the restrictions. And of course, with the brighter and warmer weather on the way, sure, we have no excuse really not to get out in the fresh air. It may even put a pep in your step. Speaking of pep in your step, has anyone signed up to the Irish Runner 5k this weekend? If so, let me know. I'm looking forward to ticking off the distance and using the virtual race to set a benchmark for next month's training and see how I go from there. I did a 6k run earlier today. Longest I've run since July, holy moly. It's taken a lot of convincing each time to lace up and go outside the past few times, but I think I'm slowly beginning to rekindle my romance with running, and the pace wasn't too shabby either. I ran in all the puddles and I splashed and giggled as much as I could. I think that was half the fun. In exciting news this week, I'm teaming up with the wonderful Helen Murray from the Inside Try Show. Check out her super podcast on all podcast platforms. We are hosting a live breakfast show called The Try Commute, taking place this Friday, 26th of February from 7:30 to 8:15 a.m. We are holding it on Zoom so you can be part of the live audience for some Friday lols and a chat with professional athlete Kimberly Morrison. We all need some fun on a Friday, so why not join us for an early breakfast and set yourself up for a feel-good Friday and a wonderful weekend. You can turn up in your PJs or you can dress to impress in your finest ball gown or lycra. The choice is yours. Register to join the session on www.trytalkingsport.com or find the link across all the socials. This week on the show, I had a great chat with Daire Feeley. The 24-year-old from Roscommon has been on a roller coaster of a ride in cycling from a very young age, embarking on a professional career in sport in his late teens. He climbed the ranks, earning hard-fought places on teams and has raced all over Ireland, Europe, America, Asia and in the European and World Championship level races with Ireland. Spending a number of years abroad chasing his cycling dreams, he returned to Ireland last year, having made the decision to retire as a professional athlete. The now former pro cyclist and a member of the Irish national cycling team is currently the number one ranked Category 1 racing cyclist in Ireland on the back of a super run of racing last season. He won 9 races in 2020. In this episode, Daire candidly chats about the highs and lows of life on the road, the impact and importance of your environment and its effect on your physical and mental well-being. Returning home, Daire is now flourishing as a rider and is enjoying his role as a coach. He has gained so much as the recipient of a hoard of advice from mentors and his support circle over the years that giving back to the sport and connecting with people as a coach is something he is embracing at full speed. Enjoy the show. We had a lot of fun recording this one. Daire Feeley, County Roscommon. Roscommon meets Galway today. How are you?
On the way, not too bad. Can't complain. I'm happy out. You're in good form, so you are, Joanne. So I'm in good form. It's amazing how that can rub off on one another. So it is.
Well, I'm just out of the sea, and despite potentially Ireland going into what they say is going to be 9 weeks of another lockdown, I'm so glad I live close to the sea. But Daire, I don't think you've been getting into the water anytime soon, or have been in the past getting into the water.
No, I think the only water I'm getting into is either the bath or puddles outside the house.
Cycling through the puddles. Daire, for my listeners who are tuning into the show and wondering who's this young lad from Roscommon that I have on, remind us what age you are.
24.
24 years of age. Tell us, what's the story? Who are you? And how did you get involved in sport?
Well, I got into the sport. It's a funny one. I was never set out on going down the route of cycling, you could say. I was one of those young lads who were involved in a number of different sports, and then happened to come across cycling through a spin with the local cycling club on St. Stephen's Day. And it's all gone from there, really. I ended up started racing in Ireland, was fairly successful at that, moved abroad. I went for professional for a year. I was living abroad for 4 years. And look, I can't really write it, it's nothing that I planned on doing. It's amazing how just one thing leads to another, and this happens and that happens. Between living just outside Monaco for 2 years to racing in China, Japan, America, everywhere, it's been a hell of a ride. And last year I returned to Ireland. I decided to just take a bit of a step back. So for 2020, I was racing in Ireland, and I ended up having one of the best seasons I've ever had. I won 9 races in what was a very short-lived season on the COVID front, but sure, look, it is what it is. And I was thereabouts in nearly every race I turned up to. And it's amazing how just years like that come out of nowhere more so. And that's about it, really. There's not much to say other than that. I'm a lad from Roscommon, strong Roscommon accent. And that's about it.
Sure, we may as well just kill the podcast there. So you've told the whole story in about 10 seconds.
That's it. Sure, look, you'll be putting it up in about 10 minutes, will you?
There'll be no editing on this show. Daire, a little bird told me you might have been a little bit of an Irish dancer before you were a cyclist, though. Is that true?
I was a jack of all trades, Joanne, so I was. Now, my mother initially got me into Irish dancing when I was very, very young. And I can remember myself being up on stage in an Irish dancing competition, and I was absolutely mortified. And at that moment in time, I knew that I do not want to do this anymore. But yeah, look, it's funny how things go, between Irish dancing, judo, hurling, football, to name a few, and then ended up cycling full time and as a professional. It's amazing how the times go, and you just end up in these strange positions, you could say.
So what was the catalyst that you ended up picking cycling above the judo or the GAA or the Irish dancing? And should I call you Twinkle Toes from here on out?
No, definitely not, because my dance moves are not impressive in a nightclub, I can tell you that much. So there's definitely no Twinkle Toes there. The catalyst would have been the Christmas period where I got my new bike, and look, it was only a mountain bike at the time, and I went out and spin with the club, and that led to another week. Got a road bike, and from there it just it took off. I wouldn't have fully committed to it until I was in my late teens. My father probably seen the talent that I had. He got me a pretty good bike one year, and I said to myself, Jesus, look, he's after buying me this bike, he's after spending all this money, so I better put it to use. And because of that, I discovered my potential on the bike, you could say, and I am where I am now, you could say.
So what was the road from that mountain bike or that new fancy bike that your dad bought you that brought you to the professional ranks of cycling? Can you go into some of that in a bit more detail for us about how you went from being the young lad from Roscommon in your teens with some talent to being on the junior tour of Ireland and progressing further and further and then moving abroad for so many years?
Yeah, it's all really started with the club scene, and I think the clubs are the main driver for a lot of, any professional athlete who, whether it's triathlon or running or cycling, they all start from club level, you could say. And that's where it started from. And it was more so through mentors and not really coaches, but just the older figures who were involved in the sport for a number of years. They were just, slowly pushing you down these pathways, opening up a couple of different doors for you along the way. And that led to the junior tour. When I started off racing, I was absolutely rubbish. Just because I wasn't training, I wasn't committed fully. But then, from these mentors, I learned a bit more. And look, mentors aren't these coaches that you pay your monthly fee to. They're your parents, they're the older guys in the club who are, giving you a pat on the back when you complete your first 40k, those sort of people. And, that had a knock-on effect. Obviously, the mentor becomes a bit more knowledgeable in the area as you progress, you're meeting new people. And, it just ended up from the junior tour to racing abroad, to racing professional, to representing Ireland, to a number of different things. And now it's just led to me to where I am now. And probably in the best condition I've ever been in terms of cycling, I suppose.
Before we talk about what you're at now, and we know you're at home, and we know you're the number one domestic rider on the scene here in Ireland based on the 2020 short-lived racing that happened last year. What was it like starting your very first race as a professional athlete?
It was actually very scary, and I definitely thrown in the deep end. So first race as a professional was Challenge Mallorca. So I was racing the likes of Alejandro Valverde, world champion at the time, against all the big teams. Dan Martin was racing, Trek Segafredo, Sky, all these teams. And looking at these figures when you're the paddy coming from Roscommon, of all places, it was scary. I wouldn't lie there, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I think a lot of the time when you're viewing these big figures, through your laptop, live streaming races and stuff like that, you're like, oh my God, these people are amazing and there's nothing like them. But then when you're up against them, it's not so bad. They are human, and you're not a million miles away from them either. But it is scary, and it was scary, and it did take me a while to find my feet. And once I did, it went fairly well, so it did, in fairness.
Would you be intimidated lining up against the likes of some of those infamous riders?
It wasn't so much intimidation. It was more of a case of, how would I say it? No, it wasn't intimidation. I can't really put a word to describe it, but it was just, I felt a bit out of my depth, not so much from the riders I was racing. It was just, more so from the status of the race you were competing in. It was, UCI 1.1, 1.2. These are, how they categorize the big events abroad and the professional scene. And coming from racing, the amateur scenes in Italy, in France, in Belgium, and then coming to these races, you feel a bit out of your depth initially, not so much from the riders, but just from the distance of the races and, terrain and everything like that. That's the big part of it. And that's what would have made me felt a bit off initially, but it definitely wasn't from the riders who were racing. But yeah, once I got my feet, it was grand. It became normal. It was part of my day-to-day from there on in.
Was it important that you backed yourself, Daire, when you were on the start line of a race, that you believed that you belonged there?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something you learn the hard way, I think. There was times before that, before I started racing professionally, I was a bit unsure about how I was going. I was a bit intimidated by other riders and stuff like that. And when I did learn how to, believe myself and back myself, things changed for the better. It's amazing how much, confidence can give you an edge going into a race. My first professional race, I was full of confidence. And we were quite a new team at the time, and there was guys there who didn't have as much confidence as I did. And normally they'd be regarded as better riders than me, but they started to crumble, where I was, at the business end of things, you could say, just because I had, strong belief in myself.
What age were you when you took part in your first pro race?
I would have been, first pro race, first UCI ranked race, I would have been 19 at the time. And racing full-time as a professional would have been 21 at the time.
So when did you leave Ireland to go pursue your dream of being a professional cyclist?
I was 19 at the time, quite green at the time, leaving Roscommon, heading over to Monaco of all places. Then I did feel out of my depth at the time, because it was a big change in scene and a big change of environment and everything like that. So 19 years of age, it was, the first flight out of here on the pursuit of the dream, as they say.
Was it difficult to leave home?
Oh, it was, yeah. I think lads a lot of the time, they think, oh, they're these big strong figures, and sure, I'll be grand, there won't be a problem with me. But there was times there where I was like, oh my God, I really want to get home. I just want to see my mammy, my daddy. I want mammy's dinner on a Sunday. Simple things like that, that's what you miss. And look, I wouldn't have admitted that at the time, but I think I'm a bit more mature now, you could say, and now I definitely would admit that.
In terms of the racing and the distances, what race or distance was the most difficult to excel at?
It wasn't really more so from distance. I think when you are a professional, distance doesn't really come into the equation. It can be, I think the big one would have been in terms of, elevation gain. So climbing and racing and stuff like that. You could be throwing a race with 4,000 meters of climbing. We were racing in China and we were racing up to 4,000 meters of altitude. So that just puts things into perspective. It's a totally different conditioning compared to, just going out racing on the flat for 300k, for example. You could have a 150k race with 5,000 meters total elevation gain throughout the race. And that's very, very hard when you're not suited to that type of race, and when you're a bit heavier, you're not these real skinny rider, from the south of France or from Italy. That's when it's hard, especially for an Irish rider going over who had no experience of this, especially racing on that circuit when they were younger, from climbing and stuff like that. It's something that you have to grow up in early to be good at it.
And do you think, having come from Ireland, you were at a disadvantage to tackling some of those big climbs?
Oh, definitely. Look, in the south of France even, or in Italy, you have climbs there that were 1,500 meters elevation gain for the entire climb. I come from Roscommon, so the highest climb that I have in Roscommon is 60 meters in elevation gain. So there's a big difference in the two. So there is, and you're definitely at a big disadvantage there on that front.
So how do you put yourself into the mix with some of those riders? What did you have to do to be able to match them and beat them?
Well, that's where I made some massive mistakes in my cycling career, you could say. The first thing that I thought I had to do was lose weight. And I had this in the back of my mind the whole time, that I need to get light. And the lighter I am, the faster I'm going to go up the climb, because I'm racing these guys who are 50 kilos, whatever they are. I'm 63, 64 kilos. So I lost 7 kilos basically, you could say, the first year I went over there. And that had a massive negative effect on my performance. Initially, I thought that the lighter I am, the faster I'm going to go up these hills. And eventually I'll get to the point where I'm competing and I'm at the business end of races getting results. But that's not how it worked. I lost a lot of weight. I lost a lot of power. My mental health was, in a negative place at the time because of this, because of starving my body, not providing it with what it should be having. And that's the route I went down initially, and that's the route that I thought I had to go down. And the team I was with at the time, it just didn't have that education for the riders, and it was a slippery slope from there. And it did take me the guts of 2 years to start recovering from that. And I would say from 2020, that was my true reflection on how good I am, because I've learned from my mistakes and I didn't focus on weight anymore. But, there is, horses for courses when it comes to these things. And sometimes you just have to accept that, right, a hilly course or racing the mountains, that's not going to be for me. My day will come. I just have to survive these races until my day does come.
You mentioned, the whole weight loss thing and the team. Was there a lot of pressure between yourself and the other riders, or was there a lot of competition between you with regards to weight and performance, or did you actually operate like a supportive team?
No, it's a funny one. And if we did operate like a supportive team, I think overall the whole unit of the team could have done better. But we were living in a house which is on the side of the Col de la Madone. It's the famous climb in the south of France. And look, there was 7 to 10 of us living in the house at any one time, and we were not friends. We did not get along with each other or anything like that, and everything was competitive, absolutely everything. It didn't seem like competitive at the time, but now that I look back on it, it was. So we were all comparing ourselves to each other, he's lighter than me, or he's lighter than me, and you be having your breakfast in the morning, and some rider would say to you, oh, what are you eating that for? You're going to get fat, and you're like, oh my God, it was such a bad environment at the time to be in order to progress as a rider. And, that, and a number of different things, they all combined together to just have this one nasty, nasty recipe. But look, a lot of it is self-inflicted, it's not that you were told to do this by one person, and it's just that environment, and that environment leads you to do strange things, and that's how it worked. But living in the house was a tough experience. You were nearly going for training really early in the morning, so you didn't have to see people at breakfast time because they'd be judging you what you were eating. They'd be asking you what weight you were that morning, a number of different things. And then when you get back, they're gone training, so you didn't have to see them at all. And when you're having your dinner, they're up in the room recovering from the training. So it's just a constant cycle of that for 2 years. And it was a really, really hard position to be in. But look, I think it was character building in a way. That's the only way I can look at it at this moment in time. But yeah, it can be difficult, so it can.
But it must have affected your own performance as well, Daire, if you were, battling with the lads in the house versus working together to be stronger as a team.
Yes, it definitely did, and I always say to people, environment is a massive, massive component, just in improving in every aspect in life, whether it's just your own mental health and well-being or your physical capacity as an athlete. Your environment has a lot to answer for. And when I came from Ireland, look, I was back home, my parents, they're supportive. You have mammy's dinners, you have, daddy giving you the pat on the back. And that's, that did allow me to develop really well as a rider. But, I left that. I went into this environment that was quite toxic. And, it did really push the brakes on in terms of my improving physically and mentally, you could say. But it did benefit me in a way, especially now, because now I know not to go back to that position. Now I know that when these moments arise in the future, that they're not for me. They may have a hindrance on me improving in my performance. But, I think there's a message in that for everybody. It just goes back to the environment and the people you're surrounded yourself with in general is a massive, massive part to do with it.
And I think that's a very valid point that you make now as well, that we're still in lockdown in Ireland, potentially for the next, 2 months or so. What they're telling us, obviously not confirmed today on the day of the interview. Maybe by the time it goes live next week, it will have been confirmed. But you're absolutely right about the environment and about being able to control bits and pieces of our environment. So whilst most of our environment is out of our control now because of COVID, the little things we can control are so important for us.
Absolutely, and that's as simple as getting up in the morning and having a conversation with whoever's in the house with you at that moment in time. Simple things like that, and just maintaining some sort of routine, because it's so, so important. You can't really emphasize it enough. I think we're always searching for secrets and stuff like that and how to get better as an athlete, but we really need to focus on the stuff that's right in front of us at any moment in time, which is your environment ultimately.
You mentioned there about the toxic environment and the effects it had on your mental health. Was it difficult to come out and talk about those difficulties that would have affected your mental health going forward?
Definitely. I look back on it now and it brings a smile to my face because I eventually did come out of that. But any time that I came home, be very close with my sister, and she always knew that, Jesus, Daire, you're not yourself. And you brush it under the carpet, and it's typical Irish thing, Asher and grand, there's not a thing wrong with me. Sure, what be wrong with me? There's not a thing wrong with me. And, eventually it did come to that point where, look, I was having a conversation and it just, with my parents, and it just came out, and one thing led to another, and it was just like opening a zip. It's like that ad on the TV. Do you ever see that ad on the TV where the woman is over the sink and you just open the zip and she's like, jeez, that's great. That's what it was like, and I know I can laugh at that now, but at that moment in time, it was a totally different situation. But yeah, it was very important to just, open your mouth about it, and I think going forward from that, if there was ever something on my mind, it's just very important to talk about it before it manifests into something that can be nasty, you could say.
Did you feel under pressure in Monaco to perform, even with all of this going on, that you had to kind of save face for the folks back home, for your mum, for your dad, for your coach, your mentor, for the people who had, I suppose, invested in you getting to where you were at the time? Did you ever feel that was part of a big load of pressure?
Definitely, and I don't know if it's just an Irish thing, but it might be the same in other countries. I think we're always thinking about what will he think if I do this, and if I do that, what will they think? And you have so many people backing you. You have your own personal sponsors and everything like that, and you're always trying to do your best for them. And then you forget to perform for you, which is the most important person at that time. And that pressure you put on yourself to perform for yourself, but more pressure to perform for the people who are, just giving you the words of encouragement and supporting you in general. That is very, very heavy. And, it's a case of you have to manage that. And I don't have an answer for that at this moment in time, but there was definitely a factor there that, did go into that recipe of, just having a hard time at that moment.
So you finished up at Monaco. Where did you go after that?
I went with Evo Pro Racing, so they were Irish professional team. It's still run by Morgan Fox, and that's where I went to after that. Monaco was an under-23 team, and I was the years in Monaco didn't go too well, and I missed out on a lot of results and a lot of opportunities because of the circumstances that I put myself through at the time. And luckily enough, I had a good end to the season in my last year. I was getting up in some of the bigger under-23 races initially, and Morgan came along, who was the manager of the team, and he says, look, you're doing well. I think there's a good opportunity for you to race as a professional. And that went from there, really. And look, that was a fantastic opportunity. Great year of racing. But, in the end, I just came to a decision for myself. I had the opportunity to go back racing professionally with Evo Pro and with other teams. I just said to myself, look, I need a break from all of this, and I just need to find out who Daire Feeley really is and what Daire Feeley really wants. And that was the most important thing, and that was the best decision that I ever made. And, I'm happy now. I'm performing well as a consequence of that. And it's amazing what happens, along the road, so it is.
Was it hard to make that decision to come home?
It was, yeah. And that all went back to, the question that you had earlier on is, the pressure that, people are expecting you to do X, Y, and Z in terms of performance. And, you have a lot of people backing you, and you're always saying to yourself, oh, if I stop now, people are going to think this and people are going to think that. And I did have to make the decision for myself. And, it's amazing what having a good environment and being in a good environment can allow you to make these decisions that bit better. And, look, it was a very tough decision, but when I did make the decision and when I did sit down with the people who were close to me, it made a massive difference. And I'm delighted I did make that decision, to be honest with you.
Do you think over the course of your career abroad, did your state of mind and your training and the pressure you're putting yourself on, did that affect your life in other ways? Your relationships with other people? Did you, because a lot of athletes, professional athletes, and even some age group athletes will be, when we're in the zone, we're just so selfish. Because everything revolves around our training or around hitting a peak performance point or a race or something. So was that part of it as well, Daire?
Yeah, definitely. And I lost a lot of friends throughout the years just because of, being that selfish athlete. And, I didn't realize it at the time, but, there's times there where I was just being a complete and utter asshole, for better words, And, I did miss out on, a lot of opportunities to socialize. I did lose a lot of friends throughout the years. But, that was all part of being an athlete at that moment in time. That's not how I would recommend someone else to go down their road of improving as an athlete. But, unfortunately, that's the path I took. And it's amazing, what happens because of that.
So you came home, COVID came. You came home, COVID came with it. Maybe not with you, but you... But you came home racing on the domestic scene for 2020. Was it 9 straight wins you had with Velo Revolution is the team that you're with now?
Yeah, Velo Revolution, yeah.
Yeah, an incredible season. But the question I have to ask you is, was it difficult to turn up on the start line of that first race as the ex-professional athlete now on the domestic scene? Definitely.
And initially there was a lot of pressure there because you're saying to yourself, right, I've been racing abroad as professionally for the past number of years and I have to do well. And thankfully I did. But you're the marked man. So when I moved, the whole peloton came after me. There was no hiding, you could say, and I did have to work for my results. And it's amazing, look, there's a lot of riders racing in Ireland at the moment, and the level is very, very good. There's a lot of very, very good riders there, and a lot of them don't back themselves and they don't realise how good they actually are. And to be honest with you, there was times there where I found it harder racing in Irish races than I did in positions where I was racing professionally. It's amazing the standard of, the Irish athletes, so it is.
In looking at your season for 2020, what was the highlight of the 9 races you won? Was there one in particular that would stand out for you?
There isn't one really that stood out for me. I think the big thing for me last year was I enjoyed the whole season, and the results were great, and it's really nice to get results, from all the hard work that you're putting into it. But the fact that I could turn up to a race and have fun and just socialise with people, and there's good banter, there's slagging beforehand, simple things like that you were missing for the past number of years. That really, really did drive me on, and I loved that, more than the racing in itself. There was no standout, result for me or anything like that, but it was just, just getting to know people. It was the socialising side of things. That's the thing that I did enjoy when it came to racing in Ireland.
Yeah, because when you look back at it, you left the country at the height of your teenage years and were already working hard as an athlete for all those years when your peers were in college or having the crack or out cycling the roads in Ireland as A3, A4, A2, A1 riders. Maybe some of them that you'd be would have been up against as a young lad had now moved on in the Irish circuit. So you did miss out on a little bit of the kind of the fun and the crack that some of the lads might have had when you were over abroad.
That's for sure, but you don't need to do that. And when I was racing, especially on the Irish team, around, say, the World Championships, European Championships, you're there with the likes of Sam Bennett, Nicholas Roach, Ryan Mullen. You go out the night after the race, you meet all the big World Tour names and stuff like that. And we're all social creatures, and we all need that social life. It's so, so important. I remember training with Philippe Gilbert when I was in Monaco, and any professional I trained with when I was in Monaco, I was always picking their brains, trying to get some bit of information that I thought I didn't have at the time. And they were always giving me the most basic of answers at the time. You just need to let the hair down every now and again. You need to have a night out, do stuff like that, go for cake, eat bad food every now and again. Don't be so hard on yourself all of the time, because that can have a negative effect on your performance. And I always looked at them with two faces, as I was saying to myself, why are you saying that? Because that's not irrelevant. But now I look back on it, or it's not relevant, sorry. Now I look back on it and I realise, Jesus Christ, if I only took that information on at that moment in time, things probably would have been a lot better. It's amazing, how important having that social life, just things like that are all part of that jigsaw puzzle. So they are.
So when you came home, did you go mad? Did you go wild?
No, I didn't go on this 10-day bender or anything like that. But geez, I'm telling you, once these restrictions lift, it's on the cards. Maybe not 10 days, but a few days anyway. I did let my hair down for a bit, yeah, but, it was in a controlled manner. It wasn't any of these Project X style, lunacy parties or anything like that. But, it was nice to do that. I did have a good few nights out. Normally you're coming home over the Christmas time, which is a great period to just socialise with people and stuff like that. But, I haven't properly got a night out at home, since I left racing professionally because of the COVID situation. But look, it is what it is. But it's a funny one, so it is. I could go on about that all day.
So has your training changed much now since you've come home?
Training changed much? No, definitely not. I think what has changed a lot is my life around training. So I'm focusing on the basics away from training. Training is all well and good, but if your environment isn't great off the bike, if you're not sleeping properly, if you're not focusing on your nutrition, simple stuff like that. And by nutrition, I don't mean, salads the whole time and, mango smoothies and turmeric and all that freaking fairy dust, yourself. It's just simple stuff, having meals with people and, eating plenty and, doing the basics right. And they just have a massive compound effect over time. And it's amazing, you just really need to focus on this sort of stuff. And that's what I've been doing. There's nothing out of this world that I've changed in terms of training approaches or anything like that. I think the biggest clue that, my success of last year left would be, you just have to be happy in order to perform well. So you do.
Yeah, it's sound advice. It's a bit like just stacking the paper, consistency across all of the pillars around, performance, nutrition, sleep, recovery. It's one big kind of circle really, but you've got the little points in it that you need to hit every day. Absolutely, and I'm sure, look, every athlete you talk to will say the same thing. And look, I think a lot of us don't want to agree with it because as humans, we always want to try and find out that there's something different that I'm missing out on or something like that. We're always curious by nature, but the reality is there's nothing there. There's nothing there. It's just that hard work, and sure, that's rubbish. But look, it is what it is, really. KISS, wasn't it? Somebody said, "Keep it simple, stupid." Oh, stop! Stupid is very important at the end of that. I was going to ask you what you would do differently if you had your time over again, but I kind of get a sense of it already, unless there's something extra you'd like to tell us. No, I think I've answered a lot of that, just from my previous ramblings, you could say. And to other riders, maybe young riders that are listening in, or to maybe mums and dads of young riders that are listening in, what advice would you give to those youth riders now coming through that would show some talent, some skills, some ability that could potentially see them become the next Daire Feeley, Dan Martin, Nicholas Roach, Sam Bennett, Sean Kelly? I would definitely say leave your options open. Don't just put yourself down this pigeonhole of, right, I have to go abroad and live like a monk and do stuff like that and forget about everything else that's important. It's important to just give yourself plenty of options, whether that's education or, do an apprenticeship or, give yourself time, get a job for a couple of years and see what you really want to do, have some time to think about it. And that would be my advice. Don't rush into it, because a lot of the time, I think when a rider is coming from Ireland, especially a younger rider, to think that, I have to go abroad and do all of this, because we hear stories of the past that, look, technically aren't true. And we only hear the sugarcoating of it, really. And look, that would be my bit of advice. But, just give yourself plenty of options and you make a decision for you. Don't be making it on, because of someone said you should do this or you're under pressure from another party. Don't go down that route, because ultimately that will just lead to possible unhappiness. So as well, and maybe early burnout as well if they don't look after themselves. Absolutely, and burnout doesn't have to just come from training. It can come from the mental side of things, all the pressure that you're putting on yourself and lack of social life, you could say, simple things like that. Burnout is a big factor, and it doesn't have to come from training. So when you were growing up, Daire, did you always want to be a professional athlete or a professional cyclist? And if you hadn't gone down the cycling and the pro ranks, what do you think you'd be at now? Jesus. I'm like you. When you were a kid growing up in school, did you want to be in sport? Did you want to travel? I loved tractors and stuff like that. You would have always found me out the back of the house playing in piles of gravel out the back. Like if my mum was on the podcast, the stories that she'd be saying about me when I was younger, I'd be locked up because of it. It's just stupid stuff. So it was, and that leads to me not knowing exactly what I want to do. But sure, look, it's a case of go with the flow, I suppose you could say. I'm sure I would have found something to do, but I do not think it would have been sport related.
I probably would have taken a different path altogether. So I would have.
You mentioned a couple of minutes ago, and by the way, we'd love to get your mum on the podcast. We might have to give her a little cameo appearance to come in. You mentioned there about when you decided to retire from professional cycling, about you needed to find out who the real Daire Feeley was and what he wanted to be. Have you figured out who the real Daire Feeley is?
I have, yeah. The real Daire Feeley is someone who is bubbly, happy, having the crack the whole time, and loves talking to people, simple things like that. That's who the real Daire Feeley is. He's a social creature by nature. That's who Daire Feeley is. And what Daire Feeley wants to do for the rest of his life or the foreseeable future, yeah, look, I like my coaching side of things. I like that. But to be honest with you, I think if we all ask ourselves, Jesus, what would I do, or what do I want to do for the rest of my life? I don't think we have an answer for that, really, to be honest with you. I'm sure you're probably in the same position, Joanne, are you? I think you go with the flow, don't you?
Hashtag winging it. My middle name, Joanne. Hashtag winging it, Murphy.
I think we all are.
I think
anybody who says they aren't, they're lying.
I think we're definitely on a COVID roller coaster at the moment. We don't know what we're at, even though try and get some level of routine every day. The swimming for me at the moment, and the bit of Zwifting and a little bit of running now as well, which is all good. Now, the next question has escaped me. It was in my head and now I can't remember what it was.
Look, we've all been in those positions, aren't we? But sure, look, what can you do?
Oh yeah, sorry, the coaching. Yeah, I was going to come back because you mentioned your coaching there. And of course, we do know that you are coaching John O'Finan and Seb from Arranmore, well, Poland, but living up in Arranmore. But you are coaching quite a few people at the moment. Was it a big change to go from the athlete to the coach?
Definitely, yeah. The athlete is easy, coach, because the athlete, and we all have an athlete within us. I think I noticed that from, just coaching, from all the individuals I've coached. The athlete is just, tell me what to do and I'll do it. The individual, there's more to the individual. There's their stories, there's their personality, there's all that comes to it. They're two totally different characters altogether, so there.
It's interesting listening to you, Daire, and think, gosh, you're only 24 years of age. Yet you talk like a person who's been around for many, many years.
My God, Jesus, at the rate I'm going, I'll be in the nursing home or something like that.
When COVID is gone, we'll say we're living successfully with COVID. What would you like to do when we can break free?
It'll definitely it'll be riding my bike. There's nothing different to what I'm doing now. Obviously, look, I'd love to get out and just have a bit of a social life and just have the crack with my mates and stuff like that. But to be honest with you, there's not a lot that I would change. I'm quite content at the moment, so I am. I love ringing up someone who I'm coaching and having a conversation with them that's nothing to do with pedaling a bicycle or anything like that. And as long as I have those simple things, I'm happy out. I'm not complaining, to be honest with you. But yeah, the first thing, maybe something extravagant, would be I'd like to travel somewhere different, and I don't know what different is at this moment in time, to be honest with you.
I thought you were going to say somewhere warm where there's no puddles.
There's puddles everywhere you go, you know that. Where it rains, there's puddles.
You need to get the Roscommon County Council out to fix the roads for the puddles. And speaking of the County Council, did I see as well that you were doing some stuff with the Sports Partnership?
Yeah, so I work as a sports tutor with the Roscommon Sports Partnership whenever I can. And we do cycle safety training. We work with people with disabilities, just sports tutoring in general. And that's brilliant, and that it's coaching. It is coaching, and it's amazing. All the different characters you meet out and about, from kids to people in their 80s. It's an amazing experience, so it is. And it's the amount you can learn from these people is incredible.
Who have been the biggest influences in your life to date that you've learned from?
Oh, definitely be my parents. Definitely would be my parents. When I do get a chance to have a civil conversation with my parents, sometimes we're arguing and stuff like that. That's common.
Do you not do the washing up?
Oh, geez, I'm serious doing the washing up. I do all that sort of things, but it's just stupid arguments. You know yourself that, you're just having one of them diva moments. When I do have, civil conversations with my parents, it's amazing how, just learning from them, giving you advice from their experience, and you taking it on board, how relevant it is in everyday life and in all the different situations that you encounter. It's incredible. Definitely would be my parents. And look, other relatives as well. It's not my parents. There's a massive amount of people who are there, that I can go to for advice. It's amazing. We all need those characters in our lives because they do shape us, so they do.
And in terms of cycling heroes, would there be anyone in particular?
Cycling heroes? Oh, yeah, there's a former professional rider. I'm not too sure if many people would have heard of him. It's Jani Brakovic. He's a Slovenian rider. He would have, been racing in tours. He would have getting top 10 tens in the Tour de France and stuff like that. I think I look up to him because he's so vocal on the social media side of things. He speaks about reality when it comes to riders' mental health, racing professionally. He's just so open, and it's amazing how much clarity riders like him can, influence people like me. And it's very, very important to have these characters because cycling is a small bubble and everything can be kept hush-hush a lot of the time. And it's good to have someone who's just speaking out and saying how it is. I don't really look up to him from a performance point of view, but I look up to him because of just his character more. So that would be. I'm not one of these guys. I love Chris Froome because he won X, Y, and Z. I like people because of their character more than anything.
If I was to go up and race against you this year, Daire, what would it take for me to beat you?
Oh, Jesus, it would take plenty of dinners anyway because I ate like a horse. Oh, jeez, I don't know. I think just focus on yourself, because one thing that I do notice when I go to races and people I'm racing with, they're always concerned about, Daire Feeley's doing this in the race and Daire Feeley's doing that in the race. And then they forget about themselves, and that's quite broad for nearly every area of endurance sports. You have to focus on yourselves because you're the main cog in the wheel. And if you forget about that, it just doesn't function properly. So yeah, look, I think people should focus on themselves when they're racing against me and they want to beat me next year. I shouldn't have said that, but look, it is what it is, and it adds an element of challenge to it going forward.
Absolutely, and sure, I'm doing so well in Zwift, I'll be an A rider before we get back road racing properly.
Jesus, yeah, you're motoring on Zwift. Zwift is it's a great tool. I'm telling you, it's just from a social point of view and just performance point of view, it's savage.
It definitely ticks an awful lot of the boxes you mentioned there, from the training to the social aspect to even just wanting to get onto your turbo trainer. And for a lot of people, that's hard. They just don't like the monotony of the turbo trainer. I know there's Sufferfest and there's Rouvy and there's so many other trainer road and loads of them, but for me, my choice is Zwift particularly.
Yeah, I love those platforms, and any platform that has the ability to bring, a massive number of people together, even if it's in an online setting or a virtual setting, it's incredible. And a lot of people are bashing Zwift because, you're doing too much high intensity and stuff like that. But who cares? It's the social side of things. It's the enjoyment side of things. And having that is just fantastic. It's probably, for all of us, it's our only escapism in this day and age, so it is, apart from your swimming across the Atlantic.
Well, I'm not sure about swimming across the Atlantic. I might try swim to Foudre again soon when the water temperature picks up. But it's funny when you think about it. Myself and Oliver have our Monday night Zwift Spin with Team Racing Without Borders, formerly Team Ireland Cycling. But we're getting an average of 180 people every Monday night tuning in for that spin. Like you'd rarely get that many people tuning in for an A4 race in Galway of a night.
Crazy,
it's amazing, and it has opened up a huge amount of communication between people and built a lovely online community. And it's not about killing yourself. It's 60 minutes and you can choose to jump on the sprints, or you can sit in behind Oliver at 2.2 watts, or you can sit in behind me at 1.8 watts average as well. But it's more about having the fun, and it's more about having it in the diary of a Monday night for the routine. You might have to join us one of the nights.
I will, but at the rate you're going, Joanne, I don't know if I'll be able to.
I'll give you a bit of my wheel. I'll give you a bit of my wheel.
There's no hiding. I know, but look, that's so true. There's so much more to especially I think with Zwift has taught us there's so much more to sport in general than just performance. It's that social element to it. There's a number of different things, and we've missed out on that the past while, and that's one thing that COVID has brought to us. Maybe a sense of community on that side of things, which is fantastic, and long live Zwift. Great tool. I can see it thriving even when, the whole situation we're in does lift, it's there to stay, so it is, which is brilliant.
Well, it's probably there to stay, but hopefully we'll get back on our bikes out on the road sooner than later. Daire, thank you so much for joining me on the show. If anybody wants to get in touch about coaching, where can they find you?
They can find me at dairefeeleycoaching.com, or they can contact me through my social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram. Simple as that.
Lovely stuff. Well, thank you so much again for joining me. It's been a blast. I'm glad to see the real Daire Feeley is full of crack and banter and a bit of fun, and well able to talk as well.
Asha, that was great crack, Joanne. Thanks a million. Unreal. Good to have a unscripted conversation. Just go with the flow, you could say. It's brilliant.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget you can get in touch with any feedback or guest suggestions by emailing me on trytalkingsport@gmail.com. I'd love to connect with you on social media. You can find me across all the socials: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn and Instagram. Pop by, say hi, let me know what you think of the show. Don't forget to check out our previous episodes. You will be impressed and inspired by our guests. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for the show. And if you have 2 minutes to spare, a review of the show would be awesome. Don't forget to join the fun on Friday for the Try Commute. Until next time, stay safe, keep smiling, and remember to look for fun and adventure in every day.